Hi, everybody. I'm Jay Trachtenberg in my home studio. This is KUTX at home, and we're really pleased to have Carlos Arévalo, who's the guitar player with Chicano Batman, to take some time out of his busy schedule to be with us this afternoon. How you doing, Carlos?
I'm doing good, Jay. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thank you. So what have you been doing with yourself during this time of quarantine?
Well, we've had a lot of press, and it's kind of like, trickling to a close because it's been about over a month now since the album was released. So that kept us pretty busy. We're also just been working on music also for some projects yet to be announced. So we've been actually really busy working on songs now.
Mm-hmm. I was talking to Deidre a moment ago that your timing was, I don't know if it's good or bad, but you work so hard. You're in a band. You work so hard to put an album out. It comes out the beginning of May, and the whole world is locked down. But
Yes.
It sounds like you guys have been making the best of the situation.
Yeah, it's kept us on our toes in the sense that we're such a, like you said, we're a band, and the group dynamic is an important part of our character as a group, and trying to figure out how to be creative and create content apart, through the magic of editing has been something that we've been getting very familiar with. And but it's cool, it's exercising a different part of our brain and our creative side. And it's, I think it's been a positive in the sense of just learning new tools of the trade.
Mm-hmm. So you've just come out with your fourth album, which is called Invisible People. And so you were saying it was kind of a group endeavor. I know that it's a little different from your previous records, certainly not as overtly political. And to my ears, there's a lot more kind of percussion drum stuff going on in there. You want to talk about how that process worked?
Yes. So for this record, we definitely wanted to try some new things. We felt like we had explored our soul inspiration for about 2-3 albums worth. And we just wanted to change it up a little bit. And there's so much other kind of music we listen to and are inspired by. And we just wanted to go and explore those sounds and see how they could be incorporated into what Chicano Batman does musically. And luckily for us, a lot of the stuff we tried, it just made sense. It felt organic and it felt natural. And in terms of like the percussion aspect and the drums being such a prominent display of the musicality, that really comes from us wanting to lean into our hip hop inspirations. We're all from Southern California, and West Coast hip hop is such a big part of popular culture. And it was not lost on us, and we just wanted to have drum beats that made your head bob, because that was something we always listened to, have grown up listening to, and we just kind of never incorporated into our music. Our music was always kind of like a swaying type of rhythm, and this one we wanted it to be a little more contemporary. And also in terms of the drums, we have Leon Michaels produced the record, who is known really well within the hip hop community. He produced a track on the Carter's record, the Beyonce Jay-Z collaboration record. And he works at Big Crown Records and has done a bunch of work with like the Arcs. And he's really well known for his WuTang records, where he deconstructs and reconstructs WuTang albums instrumentally instead of sample based. And that's all about the drums. And lastly, Shawn Everett, the engineer, the mixing engineer, he's a drummer, and he always has drums like really up in front of his mix. So it was all part of the plan.
So speaking of Shawn Everett, who's worked with the likes of Alabama Shakes and War on Drugs and done work with Beck, I heard that you hooked up with him kind of just by a chance encounter.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been fans. He first came on our radar during the Alabama Shakes Sound and Color record. We are label mates with Alabama Shakes, Brittany Howard, and we just were floored by by that record, the textures, the engineering, the mixing, the production. And we're all studio nerds ourselves. We have our own little home studio setups, and we're always trying to just get better at recording. And he's just like, he was the mountaintop to us. And we would always talk about him. And I heard a deeper understanding, the War on Drugs record and the stuff he did with the Voids. And I was just floored by his production, how he keeps growing and changing. And it was kind of just like a pipe dream to work with him. I didn't think it could happen because he's so in demand. He's won multiple Grammys out of the last 5 years. And we would always talk about him, but we didn't really have that in. And we had a rehearsal one day, and Bardo, our lead singer, went to go grab a sandwich with one of our backup members, Nikki Egan, who plays keyboards and sings on a lot of our shows. They went to go grab some lunch. Oh no, you know what? It wasn't. Yeah, they went to grab some lunch, and I ended up leaving. And after she left, he bumped into Shawn Everett and Brittany Howard on the street right outside the sandwich spot. And Brittany's a friend of ours. We've toured with Alabama Shakes a couple times. And they invited him to Shawn's studio, which happens to be like down the street from the food spot. And Bardo was in there hearing Brittany Howard's new album before it had been released. It was still in the mixing stages. And he was just like in Disneyland, you know, all this amazing recording equipment in Shawn's home studio. He's with Brittany Howard, an amazing, you know, legend in the making. And that was our in. He met Shawn, and, you know, Shawn knew who we were, and Brittany spoke really highly of us to Shawn. She was like, you should work with them. You know, they're incredible. And that was our in. And then we just had our label inquire, and he was interested in doing it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And speaking of studios, you got to record at Barefoot Studios in Hollywood, which Stevie Wonder did Songs of the Key of Life there. Jimi Hendrix is recorded there. Parliament Funkadelic, a lot of the old LA bands, the Doors and the Byrds. So what was that like, being in a studio with some vibes?
Yeah, I mean, we were looking for a studio for a long time. Kept going to these big Hollywood studios, very expensive studios, like $3,000 a day studios. And it was just like, this is astronomical, like to spend this amount of money a day on a studio when people are making incredible records on laptops, you know? Obviously, we're a group, so we like to, and for those that may not know, we record live as a group. Like, we track together to get that human element that you just can't capture without people being in a room vibing off of each other. And we try to get that killer take. Usually we get it within 3 takes, and that's the keeper you hear on the record. And then we'll add overdubs later and vocals. But the basic rhythm tracks and then most of the instrumentation is recorded that way. So we needed a studio. And after seeing all these very expensive studios and just, you know, wanting to be not frugal about it, but just be not wasteful in terms of, you know, the label cash. I had lunch with my friend Money Mark from the Beastie Boys, the keyboardist from the Beastie Boys and Beck and etc. And he was like, you got to check out Barefoot. My friend Nick Zinner from the Yeah Yeahs owns one of the studios in there, and they just opened it up to the public. It's owned by Eric Valentine, who I think he produced like Foo Fighters, Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf. Those records were made there. And we went to check it out, and it was exactly what we needed. It was like that bridge between DIY aesthetic, which we are so used to, and that, you know, bigger studio. It was like right in the middle. And they had all the quirky, cool instruments that we love, a bunch of old amps and analog equipment that we are always trying to search for on Craigslist. And we just knew that was our spot. And they had a tape machine. And a lot of these big Hollywood studios we had gone to, they had the tape machines like out of service, like in the hallways, and they're just gathering dust. And these guys had like 3 of them that were being used all the time. And Sleater Kinney and St. Vincent had just come out of the studio like a week before we had gone to check it out. So they had just made their record there. And so we were big fans of St. Vincent. And we were like, all right, if it's good enough for them, you know, it's good enough for us, of course. But yeah, there's so much vibe there. It used to be called Crystal Sound Studios. And that's when, Stevie Wonder used it and made like his 3 or 4 masterpieces in the 70s, like the early 70s. And sorry, this is my cat. It looks like a lamp. She's got a little cut on her ear, so she can't. So if you see a little plastic, sorry. Yeah, so we made the records there, and there was so much vibe. They have Stevie Wonder's piano there from Talking Book, you know, and me and my wife, our wedding song was "You and I" from Talking Book, the Stevie Wonder song. That's played on the piano that was in that studio, and it's just really magical. Like you go to the hallway, and they have like receipts for the studio time by Sly Stone, and you'll see how much the session costs and what they recorded. Same thing for George Clinton. So definitely a lot of vibe there.
So the band is from East LA, which has a long, rich history of Chicano music going back to Lalo Guerrero, the Midnighters, the Premiers, more recently Ozomatli, Los Lobos, of course, Santa Cecilia. So
Yep.
where do you guys fit in there? And is there a perception of being part of a long history, a long tradition of music?
Yeah, so Eduardo Arenas, our bassist, he's the only member that's truly from East LA. I mean, we've all functioned as a band out of the east side of Los Angeles, northeast side. My family is from Boyle Heights. My mom went to high school there, and my uncles and grandparents lived there. So I grew up actually in the suburb, but was very familiar with, you know, the neighborhood because I would go visit family all the time. But yeah, I think we fit in with that in terms of those are definitely inspirations to us. And we are all, I am half Mexican American and half Salvadoran. Eduardo is full Mexican American, and Bardo, our singer, is Colombian and Mexican American, and Gabriel, our drummer, is from Colombia. And yeah, that scene is just it's so rich, and there's such a big history. And you mentioned bands like Ozomatli, Los Lobos. Those are definitely groups that, you know, we've admired, and they've broken stereotypes, and they've broken new ground musically for Latinos, I think, in popular music. And, you know, to be mentioned alongside all those acts is definitely an honor. And I think in terms of us, stylistically, we're a little different. And I think all those groups are very different from each other, you know, and we tend to get mentioned within the same name, obviously because of regional, because of the region. But I think we all have our own little voice in that community, and it's what makes it interesting and vibrant to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, we here at KUTX have been playing "Color My Life," which is a single, and that was filmed all over. In fact, I got a kick out of seeing water in the LA River there on part of that. So it seems like, yeah, you're definitely embodying the community there and being part of that. So definitely. One of the members of the group had said something to Rolling Stone that you were trying to make the best record that you've never heard.
Yeah. So
were you successful in that?
I don't know. I think that's for maybe the fans to decide, or the for other people to decide. But that was definitely our goal. You know, I think that sets the bar high, and it just makes you want to put out as quality of music that you can, and as original as we could. You know, I mean, obviously there's a lot of references and sounds that we drew from other artists, but I feel like when it's filtered through the gaze of Chicano Batman, it comes out being something different and unique. And that's how all music progresses and changes. And we're just happy to be able to make a record that made us happy as a group. There's four of us. We're very different individually. You know, we have different tastes and different views on what is aesthetically pleasing or not. And the fact that you can get these four disparate people together and make something cohesive that we're all proud of, that's a big statement of us. So a lot of times we put out a record and there'll be a song on each record that maybe one of us isn't like too big of a fan of. You know, maybe we felt like we had to just be diplomatic and go along with it. This one was not like that. It was like we were all proud of every single 12 songs. And I felt like that says a lot about the record.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had mentioned hip hop. You all derive from just a cross section. There's Brazilian tropicalia. There's some prog rock. There's of course old school R&B. and
Yes.
and and West Coast hip hop all sort of mixed together in there. So the group for this project has kind of changed its look. Like Bardo sort of cut his hair, and there's no like roughly suits. What prompted that?
Well, so the idea for all that was, and just to give context, when we would perform in the ruffle shirts and tuxedos, we were paying homage to a lot of soul groups and just showing like some type of pageantry that we would see on bands. Like you'd see Prince wearing something like that during the Purple Rain era, or like we talked about Funkadelic, Parliament. It was just idea of like dressing up to present this, this music. And that was definitely an inspiration. I think because those inspirations are so, for a lot of generations, maybe now, so far removed, it was getting kind of lost on them. Like they didn't understand the context, the history, the rich history of that. And some people thought it was just like, maybe a gimmick. And we definitely didn't want that to distract from the music, especially on this record. So this record was all about showing us individually and our strengths musically as individuals and how that applies to a group statement. And so it was all part of the whole packaging. Was this is who we really are, this is what we look like if you see us on the streets, and here's the truest representation of us musically to date. And it was just supposed to go hand in hand.
So the album is entitled Invisible People. What's the significance of that title?
Yeah, so one day I was driving around Lincoln Heights with Bardo, our singer, and we were talking, and I was like, I have this idea for a song, kind of like the novel Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison one, Invisible People. This idea of how this is, we're talking 4 years ago now, 3 years ago. This idea that there's still so much underrepresentation in the media and in music when it comes to Latino voices. A lot of times we're background characters, or we're the gangbanger in the movie or the maid, etc. At the time, just seeing films that are filmed in Los Angeles and not seeing like a prominent like Latino or African American in it always made me upset, because it was like, this is not what LA looks like, there needs to be more representation. Anyways, so I told him about the idea, and I was like, would you be interested in writing a song about this? And he was like, yeah, I'd write a song about that. And he wrote a song, and that's the song. It's just lamenting just the underrepresentation and how much work we still need to do to build up our communities to be at a level that we're shoulder to shoulder with the mainstream, the dominant culture. And that's what it was about. But also, it doesn't even have to apply to race or any of that. It could just be applied to so many other things. Like what do people go through life kind of ignoring because it makes their reality easier to swallow? That could also be an interpretation of the lyrics. And we named the record after it because we felt like it was, obviously there's a political leaning in it, but we felt like it had the most ability to create like a subjective interpretation of it. No matter where you come from, it means a different thing to you. And that was definitely the point. We wanted to make a statement that could mean different things to different people.
Some of the issues you've just voiced have certainly risen up during these past few months, and certainly the last couple of weeks.
Definitely.
The incident in Minneapolis.
Yes.
So you had a long tour that was booked. You had dates at Coachella. You were going to come through Austin in just a few days, and that's all been at least postponed. So are there plans to reschedule at least part of that tour?
Yes. So our booking agent, it's so hard to gauge the pulse, of this virus, and when are we going to be able to open? And different parts of the country are a little ahead of the curve than other parts and etc. It's not like an even playing field. So we are looking at postponing it. And we're rescheduling dates probably for May of 2021 is what it's looking like. And we'll make an announcement on that very soon, actually this month. So it's being postponed where we can. Obviously, there's going to be scheduling conflicts because of, you know, availability. A lot of bands are going to be wanting to perform also once things open up. So there might have to be a few cancellations. For the most part, a lot of our tours being rescheduled, yes.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
Well, for the past little while, I've been speaking to Carlos Arévalo, who's the guitar player with Chicano Batman. And I want to thank you for your time and talking about the music and the album and my hometown of LA. And
yep.
So anyway, it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine.
I'm Jay Trachtenberg. I would like to thank Deidre Gott, who's the producer, who set this up for us. And you've been watching KUTX at home.